Hello, welcome to Mining Now. When you have an operating system of intelligence built for 4 million units of industrial equipment, and most of those, or a lot of those, being mining equipment, you've got to come on Mining Now. So we're going to have Kirk Petroski. He is the founder and chairman of Symboticware, and we are going to be talking about the development of the company, the changes in the industry, of course, the technology that they're offering, just an amazing amount of stuff we're going to cover today. So, this episode is going to be filmed from MIMO 2022 in Sudbury, brought to you by CIM, our great partner here at Mining Now. Quick shout out to Savona Equipment. They are our heavy industry sponsor, our heavy industry world tour sponsor, I should say, helping us get all over from South Africa to Australia. Our next event is going to be November 2nd to 4th in Sydney, Australia. So if you want to join us, make sure to reach out. We'll put links in the description below. And now here is Kirk Petroski. Hello, Kirk. Welcome to Mining Now. Good to have you on.
Great to be on, Jared.
So this is, I guess, the first day of MIMO for you?
It is. We had a nice little reception last evening, but today everything is in full throw. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see these events going on. I wish I could be there in person for this one, but I wanted to just kick off because I went on your LinkedIn before the interview, and I think you've had Symboticware for 14 years. Is that right?
Yeah, going on 14 years since 2008.
Can you talk a little bit maybe about your origin story then, sort of how you ended up, starting up that company, but also sort of what led you to it?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Yeah, my start in mining really was around 1996 or even prior to that. Um, Working in early stage exploration with Falconbridge back in the 90s. I was quite fortunate to get involved in GPS surveying and a little bit of technology early on, right when this stuff was just starting to become available in the market. So I did that till went through one big cycle where gold tanked to about $260 an ounce, and said, "Hey, I'm going to go back to school." Did my master's at Laurentian University, and then from there really got plugged into the mining supply and service, and learned a lot more about operational technology when it came to mining. So that would have been early 2000s, and I'd worked and helped out an organization called the Sudbury Area Mining Supply and Service Association, now Mine Connect.
Mm,
And throughout that process, certainly got connected with a lot of the mining suppliers, learned a lot about the types of technology needed to move towards the industry. So I was doing that as a service, but in 2008 really took the plunge in to look to see what kind of product we can build for the market. And the backdrop of that really was around you look at the introduction of iPhone and the ability to have a hardware device that delivers software as well was kind of the starting point in consumer electronics, and we were looking to do something similar in a heavy industry, in mining in particular.
I want to get a little bit of. I've learned on these interviews it's sort of important to sort of put the old way against the new way, and then people sort of
For
understand
sure.
sort of the impact. Can you don't know what you don't know. Can you paint a picture in 94 what the perception was of the technology and the future of
Mm.
technology?
Yeah. I mean, from my experiences in that early on stage, it was really, if you look at GPS, it was just released for civilian use. It had been used for defense purposes, but the ability now to put this in the hands of industry was really a starting point when it came to connectivity. And you think of cellular infrastructure going in, the old analog based cell phones, it was just the starting point. Um, Now look at operational technology and automation and mining. I'm blessed to have grown up in Timmins, but in Sudbury as well. And Inco really was at the forefront of a lot of R&D, and they had remote scoops back in the late 80s. So automation did exist. I think thanks to again putting somebody on the moon. What does it mean to connect to a rocket ship that's way out there? I mean, you can apply some of that similar technology to mining, and this was going on in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So that's kind of I think the backdrop. But you also got to look at the demographics at the time of those people in automation projects were quite young, and it was really interesting for them to get involved. And I see parallels to what's happening today in the software side and sort of what we call a disruption around software implementation and integrating that into mining operations.
L&H Industrial can custom engineer and build from the ground up any heavy equipment assembly or machine that you need for your operation. Their worldwide 24/7 field services network is on the job whenever you need heavy equipment troubleshooting, repairs, rebuilds, relocations, or replacements. And thanks to their specialized design and engineering and state of the art manufacturing and repair services, they are a go to international supplier for improved components and custom assemblies for heavy industrial machinery. Visit lnh.net to learn more. At Corporate Traveler, their seamless combination of expert service and innovative booking tech means you have what you need when you need it. Mining companies need experienced agents who know how to get you to far to reach destinations with ease, who understand rotational crew travel, chartering, and so much more. And with an average tenure of 8 years, their agents are the best in the biz and are experts at managing all your mining travel needs. Have an emergency? They've got your back 24/7, anywhere, on any device. Don't get stuck with complicated and rigid travel options. Get it done with Corporate Traveler. Visit them at corptraveler.com.
You see mining at today, and sort of tacking onto that, where what are
Mm.
the barriers that are still in place?
Yeah, I think it's anybody that knows the mining industry and tech, you know, late adopters to mining, we hear about that, but we got to look at why that is the case. And it's
Mm,
not just simple that they don't want to adopt. Time and demographics, I think, is a big one. Um, the decision makers in place today are those that were maybe more knowledgeable of technology. And in the last decade, we've seen a lot more support for technology type projects in an organization. The next would be, I think, necessity. Um, Necessity really has increased because of mining intensity. Necessity also from a lack of resources and human resources to support the mining process. So necessity is starting to, in terms of finding people. So if we
mm.
can't find people, then we need to automate. We need to put systems in place to be able to support the mining process. And then the last would be technology, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, in a moment, in a few questions.
Yeah, I guess now we'll slide into Symboticware.
Mhm.
When you started that, was there sort of a key thing that you keyed on, something that you wanted to solve?
Yeah, I think I touched on it just very high level. You look at consumer electronics, and again, I'm going to use the iPhone as an example. That was the first time that a piece of hardware was available that had embedded software. It allowed you to do multi-purpose on one standardized hardware platform.
Right.
And that really was the starting point in the mining side, saying, okay, we understand that there are point solutions. You can't put too many of these things on a piece of equipment. So how do we do better with one standardized hardware platform on a vehicle so that we can do multiple applications on it? That was one aspect. The other side was connectivity. And you got to look again, going back to what I mentioned about the GPS in '96. Satellite technology was one of the only methods to move data. That's only good for surface applications and very limited data. The move towards, and I think the biggest opportunity for a lot of us were in the mid, I'd say 2011, 2012, when Cisco made a big push into industrial Wi-Fi. I mean, we were familiar with Wi-Fi. It was introduced. We called it carpeted Wi-Fi for the shop floor or manufacturing or office buildings, but introducing that to the mining industry was something very new. So that addressed connectivity, which is where Symboticware focused a lot of its attention early on, was how do you collect data in real time from an asset moving either underground or surface, and then wait for connectivity and then offload that data. So we developed patents and store and forward capabilities. Uh, but now we're seeing, which is great, it's not that it's ubiquitous yet, but you're seeing public LTE now mold in or fold into private LTE opportunities just to get greater resolution, greater connectivity in mine sites. So, and then beyond that, we're seeing the reintroduction of satellite companies come in and offer additional abilities to connect. So I think the industry has evolved enough on connectivity to say, okay, Symboticware has demonstrated how do you take data from an asset. The other piece then is now how do you integrate and start creating value with that. And I think the journey has been 10 years of data discovery. Show me that this is the art of possibility. We have a lot of data. Everybody talks about data overload. Now it's about creating value with that data. Now that it's reliable, now that it's structured data, and it's taken the industry at least a decade to get there.
Founded in 1989 in South Africa, the Bloemburton Engineering Group is a world leader in ventilation, refrigeration, and cooling systems for underground mines. BBE Consulting Canada, created in Greater Sudbury, Ontario, is part of the BBE Group of companies since 2016. Its services include mine ventilation and cooling system modeling, feasibility studies, detailed engineering, procurement and construction management, as well as site ventilation surveys, ventilation audits, and training mentoring for underground mines across all Americas. You can reach out to BBE Consulting Canada by visiting bbegroup.ca or writing to enquiries@bbegroup.ca. Also, watch out for BBE's upcoming episode on mining now. Okay, so let's give a special thank you to one of our longest sponsors of the show, Savinaw Equipment. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Jared so that he can give you a little bit more info on Savinaw Equipment.
Yeah, thank you. So I mean, people see them as sponsors, so they'll ask me, kind of who they are, what they are, and just trying to understand the scope of the company. So Savinaw Equipment is a mining supply company, and they're delivering on the whole equipment supply chain. So everything from the ore processing to underground mining, open pit. They're in hard rock and placer operations. And what they're doing is they're sourcing equipment from all over the world and then delivering it all over the world. Now, they are a Canadian company, so they're based there, but, let's say, they're selling entire ore processing plants. So there might be a plant down in Latin America, and there's a new mine that needs that plant in Africa or somewhere in the US. So they're facilitating that entire transactions. But they're also delivering, an individual conveyor or a concentrator or a pump package or just an electrical package. So it really is the whole gambit of the mining equipment supply chain. Did you have a clear path forward? Did you know the problem that you wanted to solve and had a good idea of how to solve it? Or was a lot of this stuff at that time, because, at that time, I don't know how long the iPhone was out at that point. Not that long. Did you have a clear path forward, or was it really a giant R&D project to the start?
I think, again, going back to where we are based out of Sudbury, we had such a wonderful opportunity to look to researchers, to look to industry and create the types of partnerships. And very much it was a pull from the industry, but it was a push from our side to say, you know what, we can develop a common platform. You look at it back then, we just call it, it was a Linux platform and you load software on it. Well, okay, so what do you want to do with it? We started up in Baffin Island doing weather stations, stations that were powered by our Symbot that could behave in the Arctic, shut down, and then wake up to be able to take a reading and send it out. That was the start for us from a connectivity. But really the scale wasn't there. So mining became a default by being here in Sudbury and working with, the companies that are today now that are now Vale and Glencore, but back then was Inco and Falconbridge. So I think there was a lot of desire to get there. We put the pieces together, and also want to recognize back then there was a lot of funding available to help bootstrap an organization to play in a sandbox for a while to be able to understand and build that technology before taking it to a global market.
You said there was at that time.
Yeah, it was a starting point. We had to put the pieces together, but there was federal funding, municipal funding. There was a Center of Excellence for Mining Innovation. Many different organizations had established themselves to be able to support innovation, mining innovation in Ontario, Northern Ontario, and Canada.
I hear a lot on this show. I've heard a lot about sort of the new opportunity of companies sort of looking. They used to develop internally and have
Hmm.
people, and now they're more. Now they're bringing external companies in their software and their technology and hardware and all that sort of thing. So, would you, in your case, because you'd come out of the mining world, did you sort of have an opportunity to work with these companies as a more of a direct line, or
Yeah,
have
we did.
now lately though has more of the industry opening up from an
Hmm.
internal sort of strategy? Has that been a big help, or how can you compare the two?
Yeah, I think again, going back to the time when we started, I think it was a lot of downsizing of R&D departments within the mining companies themselves, which facilitated the growth of, let's call them broker R&D organizations, some not-for-profit, that would come and work with the mining companies, but also plug them into the supply chain or the suppliers to help develop new technology, which is largely part of what we did. Um, Fast forward today, they still continue to provide funding, they being the mining companies themselves, to support innovation. We see a lot of that here within the Sudbury Basin. I think that needs to continue because these are the suppliers that are going to help address their needs. They got to look for sustainable sourcing. They got to look to suppliers, especially with the challenges of today, that can help them meet that mining intensity and meet the challenges of mining today.
In business since 1960, DyeCorp is a leading private manufacturer and distributor of specialty chemicals, equipment, parts, and accessories, serving the energy and mining industries. DyeCorp manufactures and distributes a full line of drillers' edge coring rods, core retrieval systems, and diamond tooling for diamond core drilling worldwide. They also manufacture and sell high-quality Earth Pro drilling fluids and additives for the mineral exploration and energy industries. For more, you can visit them at dye-corp.com or contact their head office at 780-440-4923. It's Canada's premier event for mining, metals, and materials professionals. The Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy, and Petroleum will be hosting its annual convention and expo in May in the beautiful city of Montreal. The technical program will feature expertise from a wide range of leaders across industry sectors. Are you working on a project that others in the industry need to know about? Well, let them know. CIM is now seeking presentations on a variety of topics. You can visit them at convention.cim.org to learn more. I actually do have a question. I know you mentioned, they take care of the purchasing, the shipping worldwide. However, if you're looking for a particular mining equipment that they perhaps may not have on
Hmm.
hand, can they actually facilitate that for you as well?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge part of their business because, and it's if you went on to SavinawEquipment.com, I'm a shameless plug for them, but if you go onto that website, you'll see just this huge array of equipment. So it's easier to think maybe there's like random people just uploading equipment. It's not. They put that equipment on. They're also finding particular pieces of equipment for people from all over the world going to all over the world again. So yes, people, you can reach out to them and contact them, and then they will source that equipment and get it to you as well.
Oh, that's great then. Well, then you definitely have to check them out if you're looking for mining equipment. Visit them at savinaequipment.com where you will find more equipment every day.
Let's talk a little. I mean, AI, I'm sure it's a major component of yours. Can we talk
Hmm.
about the development of that and the integration into Symboticware?
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely, that's twofold. One from a technology and one from a growth strategy from the company. So we talk about the start, the origin of Symboticware being a hardware company. We solve some very difficult challenges, and that hardware will continue to be our enabling technology, our competitive advantage when it comes to getting access to the data to drive AI and other data analytics. So I think that journey and the foundation was very important. However, as I talked about the decade of data discovery, it is now the customers are looking for driving value around that data. There's also, we talked about the necessity around human resources to support mining. If we don't move towards AI and the use of other systems to help people do their jobs, see it as a tool, I don't think we'll be able to keep up with the future demand. So hence the transition for the organization. From a growth strategy in terms of where we are as a company, again, when I started, it was a bootstrapped organization. We were very good at securing partnerships to help develop technology. That's been proven, it's done. Now we need to take on venture capital to scale the company, which is why the move towards software as a service
Right.
and particularly around AI.
Can you just quickly, Kirk, break down just your just sort of your suite of services? Because I was looking on your website
Hmm.
and you just sort of have them broken down to three. Can you just sort of
Sure.
outline what they are?
We started again on the hardware side, but from a platform, we call it Foresight AI. Let's put that right in the middle. And that was the ability to collect real-time data and provide analytics to solve problems or issues that mining companies would have with their mobile fleet. So such an important platform, but there's also, you need to be able to meet the customer where they are on their journey. So our other product is more of a rear view mirror using AI, that being Squares, which allows us to use NLP or natural language processor, and it has the ability to comb through, could be 5 years, 10 years of historical service orders, which allows a company to see at a component level where their failures were, what were the costs of the failures, which ones occur more often. It gives them a whole view of their asset at a fleet view. So now it gives us the ability to go to a customer site, and instead of asking what the problems are, we can help analyze and mine historical data that's
I
been
see.
sitting there to make use of it. That then sets the stage for a platform that can monitor to address those problems. Once we get that stable, the predictive AI, which the industry is moving towards, it's certainly not there yet. And I think there's got to be more trusting of the data and the information that's being provided before people adopt that. So that's sort of the journey from the rearview mirror to what is today to what is the future.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that trust in technology, but I wanted to ask first is the when you're looking at that past data, is it pretty consistent what those where they're losing efficiency and safety issues and things like that? Is it pretty consistent or is it pretty unique to each mine?
That's a good question. There's some things that are consistent, but you got to look at the three real contexts for the data. So one would be environmental, or
Mm,
maybe more situational. So I don't mean environment from environmental and ESG, just in general. What type of operating environment is that vehicle in? What's the temperature? What's the weather?
right.
What's the road conditions? So that's one. Two would be the operator itself, and three would be the OEM vehicle itself. So within that, we can recognize trends, but we have more context as to why something is occurring. So you got to kind of frame it in those three lenses and not just say it's the OEM information that we're after, or it's not the operator, it's the environment. So that's a starting point for discovering what those trends would be.
Well, like something like I noticed on the I think it was Foresight AI that eliminating speed
Hmm.
incidents. So would
Yeah.
that is that if you went to every second mine, would do operators have a tendency, or is it 1 out of 5 like what would you sort of see as like speed being a
Mm.
factor?
Yeah, I would think where we started, I think overspeeding was always a factor in that. If you're looking at underground mining, you might have ramps, you might have more freewheeling, you might have demand to hurry up with your cycles. So there was an incentive or maybe a behavioral side for speeding without really understanding the implications of the damage it could do to the equipment, because maybe production was more important, or whatever the objectives were. And then from a safety side, of course, overspeeding has the potential definitely for fatal accidents. So those are some of the key drivers around speed and why it's important to be able to provide some visibility as to what's happening on the equipment. Again, before there was no connectivity, so really it was go, here's what we want you you do today, and then come back at the end of the shift and report that. Well, now there's much more visibility as to what's going on.
So what is the customer, the actual
Mhm.
end user, are they getting recommendations within it, or do they look at the data and then they
Yeah.
decide what course to take?
Usually the mine has well, not usually, they do have a set speed limit in certain, or actually in zones of the mine. We're talking underground or surface. So there is a threshold in which they can work within. Foresight, as an example, would work with those thresholds to provide alerts or alarms for certain
Mm,
individuals that need to get that. There is the lockout capability as well. That one of our case studies really was prevention, but as it would derate an engine to a slower limp mode, we call it, so that they would have to get that vehicle unlocked by a supervisor. So really, it changed the behavior of people knowing that they're going to be accountable for overspeeding. So it keeps the vehicle within a certain parameter of operation. The same with load weights when moving, or underweight or overweight,
hmm.
tire pressures, tire temperatures. Those types of uh, parameters are monitored very closely to keep them, basically the mining has a lot of variability in its process. This helps minimize some of that variability to create consistency and less breakdown of the equipment.
So this is what I was trying to get to, and I might not even realize that I was doing it. Um, when you come into a mine, I'll give an example. Just before you, we had another guest on, and they were talking about it was Brant, and they were talking about underground mines now starting to do things like having paved, looking at those as options, right? So it's less wear on the vehicles and obviously
Hmm.
safer and everything like that. So those parameters on that mine will obviously be very different on a mine that does not have that environment where the
Right.
ground is rougher and things like that. So
Yeah.
so to put those safeguards in place that you're, like control the engine to shut it down and things like that, then there must be an assessment period, and then they have to know exactly what they want, and then you can activate those sort of
Yeah.
warnings and all that sort of thing. So there's
Yeah.
that's an
Yeah.
environmental component you're talking about.
Exactly. And I think that, I mean, that's a great example of, there were probably road surveys or studies done, whether or not it was real-time data or somebody, just evaluating it. The end result was, okay, we have road conditions that are rough. There's a lot of bounce. We lose, if they're tramming with an LHD, are we losing some of the load? Does that load does it end up rupturing a tire, because there's all kinds of variables that can
Right.
happen uh, because of that type of road. So they made a decision to pave it, or they're in the process of doing that. That's kind of what study, whether it's real-time data or others, and looking at how do you optimize. Basically, it's a cycle time. They have X amount of minutes that they want to cycle, and anything that prevents them from achieving that needs to be rectified.
So it's going to be kind of a two-part question. Is one is the trust in technology. Where is that sort of at in the industry, and not just from sort of an executive and a management position, but also the people on the ground. Sort of your sense of that, and also just where are they being sort of forced to, because of the demand of ESG, to adopt the technology as well, to
Mm.
not sort of drag their feet as much and say, okay, we got to get this going. Does it work? Let's do our checks and let's get it implemented because we now need it. So sort of the trust on one and the sort of the urgency of adoption. Have you seen that
Yeah,
shift?
no, absolutely. I think the trust element to data and AI over time. I mean, that's what we're missing here. The element of time to understand that first, this is possible. When we started, really it was, you're showing me this data from an OEM vehicle. How do we know it is the correct data? So from a technology side, there was a lot of demonstration to the mining companies themselves that it did correlate with what the OEM was providing or could provide manually anyway. So, trusting the data was one. Um, Trusting that it can get integrated is the second one into some sort of platform, and then making value of the data. Then can you trust the output? So you're talking about the AI output today. I think the industry is still early, and why we strategically looked at Squares as a product, because we're using their known historical data that sits in an ERP system that's been used already. So we don't have to overcome that barrier there. I still believe that the AI, the future AI, to say, hey, something is going to fail, we predict it's going to fail in 2 weeks if you don't take action, that's going to take more time. Also, the nature of the way um, asset maintenance is conducted,
Mm.
whether or not the mining company has reliability on the OEM to provide that service or their own team will provide service, those things are still kind of maturing, if you will. The OEMs had the major contracts for maintaining and were responsible for those when they're under warranty. What happens when they're off warranty? But now we're introducing new battery electric equipment. What happens to the maintenance contracts for those? So there are a lot of still. It takes more time to mature. So I think trust from just a broader based technology. I think the fact that we've used consumer electronics now very effectively, maybe too effectively, some people are too absorbed in them. However, I think our expectations now is this is fairly routine. And then again, looking at the generation that we need to attract into the mining industry, if you don't have that technology,
Mm.
then they're seen as laggards. They're seen as not a attractive place to work. So there's a lot of drivers that are coming into play here. And
The moving from it being an option that we should look at
mm,
to, okay, we need something, so we
yeah,
need to choose which one now. Like this is not as deciding, like with
yeah,
ESG demands and things like that, government policies for new mines. I mean, that's happening now all over the world. It's not
correct.
just Canada.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just that
yeah,
sort of that shift, have you seen that shift from
yeah.
an option to a demand?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a key driver. If you look at some of the areas in which people will adopt. This is a compliance. So this is no different than when the coal industry implemented tracking systems, and a lot of technology companies grew because of a compliance side.
Mm.
This is going to be not only compliance. This is a reason to operate. This is to attract the next generation
Yeah.
into something that is being rebranded. I mean, as we're trying to convince people to support the battery electric movement in consumer vehicles. Well, you have to support mining.
Yeah.
Well, mining is dirty. Well, no, it's not. These are the things that we are doing in our practices to make mining more attractive so that people will actually consume the end products of the raw materials the mining industry is delivering.
What's next for the company? What are you sort of looking forward to? What are you trying to accomplish in the next few years?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. When we moved from the hardware in the last decade to software, I think that gave us a broader vision. At least it opened my eyes from a guy in Northern Ontario. All of a sudden, the horizon's a lot larger.
Hmm.
My horizon was only so far; can only take it so far. Bringing in an experienced CEO that knows, what the horizon, the potential is like, it's very exciting for organization. So I think the pivot, not a pivot, the emphasis towards software as our predominant of what we are as a product company was important for that transition. Last year, we did our first seed stage funding, never taken venture capital when we were bootstrapping the company. Um, what's the future? We're just about to close a Series A. I'm very excited about that. I mean, that's going to be a major infusion of equity and some grant money as well. Very excited for that. And then some of the key partnerships that give you one example. Last week we just signed with SpaceX, which
Oh wow!
to
Congratulations.
us allows us, yeah, it's a huge opportunity to address a market that the satellite industry has been around, but was always quite expensive and maybe not so cost effective to connect up assets. Um, this allows us to hit a market with whole new applications in very remote areas as well that traditionally we've done a lot of work for remote type operations. So that's a great indicator that we are certainly on the right track as a company, and there's going to be a demand for the products that Symboticware is providing to our industry.
For you as a founder and someone who has built this company up, are those changes? I mean, obviously these changes happened with and the
Yeah,
development of the company with you pushing it forward. Is that is there any when you found something, you have a way that you thought it was going to go, the way it ends up going, the way that you see that it needs to go. You have all these moving
yeah,
parts. Never mind the technology and customer service. Just
yeah,
never mind that side of it.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
what is that experience like for you? Is it do you ever sort of feel that resistance, or for you is how do you sort of approach changes, the new opportunities? Are you always looking for them? Sort of what's your outlook on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, really, that's a reflective type question as a founder, and it's when you create something, maybe the framework is it's chaos in the beginning, and that's a fun
Hmm.
chaos. I don't mean it from, it's not controllable and that it's just an experience that building an organization from scratch, really from an idea, and then over time you build in processes to make it sustainable, make it grow. Fast forward to the last 2 years was a blessing for the company. It was an opportunity to say, you know what, we've succeeded in hardware, but really it's not the scaling activity as the core product of what we want to do. So let's, not that we broke it, but let's go back to building something new. Let's build software. Let's create a bit of chaos and excitement again. And over
Hmm.
time, we'll build in the process. So it's kind of like you have to let something go in order for something to grow.
Yeah.
And that, as a founder, is a really special place because, you know, if I've been in, I'm in my 50s now. I've been at this for over 20 some years in the mining industry, and it's, you got a lot of foundational learnings. You have a drive for achievement, but really at a certain stage in your life, it's about nurturing the next people in your organization or others
Hmm.
around you to build it bigger. And that's why, I think as a founder, it's kind of a blessing to have gone through that and see the next generation and the next group of people take it forward.
Yeah, it's interesting you use that word chaos because I there's something about because people use different terminology. I like the word chaos because even in my own life and in my personal career, there's this thing I think is you kind of have to go into chaos and then you need to turn it into order, but you don't want to
Yeah,
then get stuck in that order. That's where
you,
companies really have a tough. They got to
yeah,
go. Okay, we got this in order. Now we got to move
yeah.
to the next chaos. And chaos is a great word because it is a scary word for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the going back to mining and introducing that, like, by nature, miners and engineers are risk adverse. So all of a sudden, all this infusion of new software and
Yeah.
technology, in some ways, in their mind, that's chaos. How do I make order out of what I'm seeing? How do I make sense of what is important for the industry? And going back to where the question where we started, why, is mining sort of a laggard in this area? It's because dealing with chaos requires special people to be able to turn that into order. And I think
Yeah.
that's also the transition that our industry is going through. But it's also an exciting time for a younger generation to get involved. Meanwhile, you still have to operate a mine safely and responsibly. So there's a lot of factors going on right now in the
Yeah.
mining industry that are very exciting, and that's where you're going to find a lot of opportunities as well.
Well, Kirk, I'm very glad to have you on the show, and Symboticware is sort of represents what this show is trying to be about. It's it's the experience in the industry. It's always a little harder if someone's coming from outside the industry and they're trying to get into mining. It's harder to have them on the show. But someone like yourself has that experience, but they're also bringing in new technology. It just adds so many layers that I think is why I hope people enjoy the show. So just thank you for
Yeah.
taking the time to come on.
And thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Jared. It's been a pleasurable experience. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, everyone. We're gonna have lots of links to Symboticware. Very, very interesting company, and it's the other thing that I was gonna say to Kirk is that it's nice when a company has experience as they've been around for a few years, so that it's not they haven't just been in the industry for a couple years. It just adds layers as well. So thank you everybody for watching. We've got more episodes coming from Mimo that you can look out for. Please make sure to subscribe. We love doing these episodes and we love your support. We will see you on the next episode of Mining Now.